Chicago winters don't care who you are. They don't care if you're rich. They don't care if you're poor. And they definitely don't care if you're 10 years old and completely alone. On a freezing afternoon in January, a thin white boy sat outside the fence of Lincoln Park Elementary. His name was Elijah Brooks. His coat was too small. His shoes had holes. His lips were cracked from cold and hunger. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. Inside the schoolyard, children laughed. They traded snacks. They ran in circles. They complained about math homework. Elijah just watched. He didn't beg. He didn't speak. He didn't even stand up. He just stared at the food in their hands like it was something from another planet. That's when she noticed him. A 9-year-old black girl with neat braids and a pink ribbon tied carefully into her hair. Her name was Naomi Carter. Naomi lived 3 blocks away in a small apartment with peeling paint and broken heating pipes. Her grandmother raised her while her mother worked double shifts at a nursing home. Naomi didn't have much. Her lunch that day was simple. Half a peanut butter sandwich. An apple. A small carton of milk. It was all she would eat until dinner. But she couldn't stop staring at the boy outside the fence. "Don't look at him," her friend whispered. "He's weird." Naomi shook her head slowly. "He's not weird," she said. "He's hungry." The bell rang for recess to end. Kids rushed back inside. But Naomi didn't move. She walked toward the fence. Step by step. Her heart was pounding. She stopped inches from him. Up close, he looked worse. His eyes were sunken. His fingers were shaking. He looked like someone who had already given up. Naomi didn't ask questions. She didn't ask where his parents were. She didn't ask why he was there. She just slowly unwrapped her sandwich. And pushed it through the fence. For a second, Elijah didn't move. Like he didn't believe it was real. "Take it," Naomi whispered. He grabbed it. Ate it in seconds. Didn't even chew properly. Tears rolled down his face while he swallowed. Naomi watched silently. When he finished, she pushed the apple through too. Then the milk. "You can have it all," she said. He finally looked at her. "Why?" he asked weakly. Naomi shrugged. "Because you look like you need it more than me." That was the first day. She went home hungry that night. Her grandmother noticed. "Baby, you didn't eat at school?" Naomi hesitated. Then told the truth. "There's a boy outside the fence. He doesn't have food." Her grandmother didn't scold her. Didn't panic. She just looked at Naomi for a long moment. Then she said something that would echo for decades. "If the Lord put him in your path, then you share what you have." The next day, Naomi packed 2 sandwiches. She gave one away. The day after that, she gave hers again. And then the next. And the next. And the next. For 6 months. Through heat. Through rain. Through snow. Every single school day. Elijah waited by the fence. And Naomi showed up. Sometimes she brought soup in a thermos. Sometimes crackers. Sometimes extra fruit. Her family began stretching groceries thinner so she could keep helping him. They were already struggling. But they made space for one more plate. Weeks passed. Elijah began to talk. He told her his mother had passed away suddenly. That foster care placements hadn't worked out. That he had run. That sleeping outside felt safer than being unwanted inside. Naomi listened. She never treated him like he was broken. She asked about his favorite subject. He said science. She said math was better. They argued playfully. She started bringing him old books from home. He read them like treasure. One freezing afternoon, Elijah was shivering violently. His jacket wasn't enough. Naomi went home that evening and did something that shocked her grandmother. She took her only winter coat and brought it to him the next day. "You'll freeze," he said. "I have another one," she lied. She didn't. She wore sweaters for the rest of winter. Caught a cold twice. Never told him. One day, a teacher noticed. Mrs. Graham stood at the window watching Naomi pass food through the fence. Instead of reporting it, she quietly began placing extra snacks in Naomi's locker. Adults began helping without asking for credit. Kindness multiplied quietly. Then one morning, Elijah didn't show up. Naomi waited. And waited. And waited. 3 days passed. Nothing. On the 4th day, a social worker arrived at school. Elijah had been placed into a long-term foster home in another state. No goodbye. No warning. Just gone. Naomi went home and cried into her pillow. That evening, she took the pink ribbon from her hair. Cut it in half. And the next day, she tied one half around the fence where he used to sit. Just in case he ever came back. She kept the other half. Years passed. Naomi grew up. She studied social work. She wanted to help children who felt invisible. Children like Elijah. Meanwhile, Elijah never forgot. The ribbon she tied around his wrist the day before he disappeared? He never took it off. He kept it through high school. Through college. Through nights sleeping in his car. Through internships. Through his first business failure. Through his first million. Through his 10th million. Because every time he wanted to quit, he remembered one thing. Someone once saw him when no one else did. And that meant he had to become someone worth seeing. At 29 years old, Elijah Brooks was worth $38 million. But there was one thing he didn't have. Naomi Carter. And he had spent 5 years trying to find her. He bought property near that old school. He funded programs in that neighborhood. He hired private investigators. Nothing. No trace. Until one email changed everything. Community board meeting, Southside Youth Center. The director listed Naomi Carter. Elijah stared at the screen. His hands began to shake. It couldn't be. Could it? After 20 years. Could she really still be there? That night, he decided to go himself. And neither of them knew. That in less than 2 hours, a promise made between two hungry children was about to wake up again. Elijah almost didn't go. For 20 years, Naomi Carter had lived in his memory like a photograph that never faded. But memory is safe. Reality isn't. Reality can disappoint you. Reality can tell you she forgot. Reality can tell you she moved on. But something in his chest, something that had been restless for years, told him, go. The Southside Youth Center was nothing like his office tower downtown. No marble floors. No glass walls. No security guards in suits. Just old brick, flickering lights, and a hand-painted sign near the entrance that read, "Every child deserves a future." Elijah paused when he read that. Because that sentence had once been him. Inside, folding chairs filled a modest hall. About 50 people were seated, parents, teachers, volunteers, local residents. At the front stood a woman holding a clipboard. Confident posture. Professional but simple clothes. Natural hair pulled back. Strong voice. Elijah Brooks Developments has proposed a renovation project, she said. But before we approve anything, we need transparency. Elijah froze. That voice. He hadn't heard it in 20 years. But he knew it instantly. He stepped inside slowly. She turned slightly to adjust the projector. And time stopped. Naomi Carter. Older. Stronger. But the same eyes. The same calm fire. She didn't recognize him. Why would she? The starving boy she fed was now broad-shouldered, sharply dressed, composed. Success had reshaped him. But he would recognize her anywhere. She continued speaking. We've seen developers promise opportunity before. What guarantees do we have that this project won't displace families? The room murmured. Elijah realized something. She wasn't just working here. She was leading. Fighting. Protecting. Just like she had protected him. The moderator cleared his throat. Mr. Brooks is here tonight to answer questions personally. Heads turned. Whispers spread. That's him? The CEO? He actually came? Elijah stepped forward. Every step felt heavier than the last. He reached the front of the room. And for the first time, Naomi looked directly at him. Professional. Measured. Unaware. Mr. Brooks, she said. Thank you for coming. Her voice was steady. His wasn't. Of course, he replied quietly. She gestured to the screen. Can you explain how this renovation benefits current residents? He should have launched into financial projections. He should have talked about budgets. But he couldn't stop staring at her. After a moment, he forced himself to focus. Yes, he said. He spoke clearly. Affordable housing units reserved for local families. Job training partnerships. Community hiring guarantees. Scholarship funding. A youth outreach program. As he spoke, Naomi's expression shifted. Not impressed. Not skeptical. Listening. Studying him. When he finished, she stepped forward. And what motivated this investment specifically in this neighborhood? There it was. The question beneath the question. Why here? Why now? Why us? Elijah swallowed. Because of you. But he couldn't say that. Not yet. I grew up near here, he answered carefully. I know what it feels like to fall through the cracks. Something flickered in her eyes. But she stayed composed. And how do we know this isn't temporary goodwill? She pressed. Elijah hesitated. Then something inside him decided. Enough hiding. Can I ask you a question? He said gently. The room grew quiet. Naomi folded her arms. Go ahead. Did you attend Lincoln Park Elementary 20 years ago? Her posture changed instantly. How would you know that? His voice dropped. Did you ever feed a boy through the fence? The air shifted. The room went silent. Her clipboard slipped from her fingers. It hit the floor with a soft clap. 20 years collapsed in a single breath. She stared at him. Really stared. Not at the suit. Not at the title. Recognition hit slowly. Like dawn breaking. Elijah, she whispered. He nodded. It was barely visible. But it was enough. Her hand flew to her chest. Oh my God. The room was confused. What's happening? You two know each other? Naomi didn't hear any of it. Elijah Brooks, she repeated. It's me, he said softly. I came back. For a moment, neither moved. Then the moderator cleared his throat awkwardly. Perhaps, we should take a short break. Chairs scraped. People whispered. But Elijah and Naomi didn't notice. They were still staring at each other like they were afraid the other might disappear again. Finally, she stepped closer. "You're alive," she breathed. "I told you I would be," he said. Tears filled her eyes. "You disappeared. I was placed out of state. I tried to find you when I turned 18. I didn't know your last name." Naomi let out a shaky laugh through tears. "I tied the ribbon to the fence." His breath caught. "I kept mine." He reached slowly into his coat pocket. Pulled out a small keychain. Attached to it, a faded pink ribbon. Worn thin, but intact. Her hands covered her mouth. "You kept it. Every day." Silence again. Then suddenly she moved. She hugged him. Not politely. Not carefully. Tightly. Like someone who had once watched him almost die. The room watched quietly. No one interrupted. When they pulled apart, Naomi wiped her eyes. "You're not 10 anymore," she said softly. "You're not 9 either," he answered. She laughed weakly. Then grew serious. "You built all this?" "I tried to build something that would make you proud." Her breath caught at that. "You remembered that?" "I remembered everything." She looked at the presentation slide still glowing on the wall. "This project, is this because of me?" Elijah didn't lie. "Yes. Not just for her. But because of her." She stepped back slightly. Overwhelmed. "You bought half this neighborhood. You bought half this neighborhood. I hoped I'd run into you." "For how long?" 5 years actively. 20 years in my heart. That did it." Tears again. She shook her head. "This is unreal." He smiled gently. "No. Unreal was a 9-year-old girl giving her only sandwich to a stranger." They stood there in silence. The room slowly filtered back in. But something had shifted. This wasn't just a development meeting anymore. It was a full circle. The moderator cleared his throat. "Shall we continue?" Naomi inhaled deeply. Composed herself. Then looked at Elijah. "Finish your presentation." But her voice had changed. It wasn't guarded anymore. It was personal. Elijah nodded. He finished outlining the project. But now, every word carried history. When the vote came at the end of the meeting, it passed unanimously. As people left, many shook Elijah's hand. Others hugged Naomi. Whispers spread quickly. "That's the boy she saved. He became that. That's what kindness does." Eventually, the room emptied. Only Naomi and Elijah remained. Standing where 20 years had just rewritten themselves. She looked at him carefully. "Why didn't you forget me?" He answered without hesitation. "Because you were the first person who ever treated me like I mattered." Her eyes softened. "And now?" "Now I want to know the woman you became." She exhaled slowly. "This is a lot." "I know. You're a millionaire. You're the reason I survived long enough to become one." Silence again. Different this time. Less shock. More gravity. He stepped back slightly. "I'm not here to overwhelm you. I just don't want to lose you again." She studied his face. Searching for the boy she once knew. And she found him. Still there. Just stronger. "Dinner," she said finally. "Dinner," he repeated. "One dinner. No promises. No pressure." His smile was immediate. "Deal." She hesitated. "Just Elijah and Naomi. Not CEO and director." "Just Elijah and Naomi," he agreed. As they walked toward the exit together, He noticed something. A thin ribbon chain around her neck. Half of it. She had kept hers too. Outside, the Chicago air was cold. But for the first time in 20 years, neither of them felt alone. And neither realized yet that the promise made by two children was about to grow into something neither of them expected. The restaurant Elijah chose wasn't expensive. That surprised Naomi. For a man worth tens of millions, she expected something extravagant: white tablecloths, private rooms, cameras flashing outside. Instead, he parked in front of a small neighborhood diner. The same kind of place they might have walked past as kids. Naomi raised an eyebrow. "You sure this is where you want to eat?" Elijah smiled. "It's where I learned something important." "What's that?" "That food tastes better when you're grateful." She laughed softly. "Still dramatic, I see." Inside, the diner smelled like coffee, grilled onions, and fresh bread. Comfort food. Simple. Real. They sat in a booth near the window. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. Not because they didn't want to, but because 20 years of memories were sitting between them. Finally Naomi broke the silence. "So, Mr. CEO." He groaned. "Don't start that." She smirked. "I have to. I fed a starving kid through a fence, and now he owns half the city." "I don't own half the city." "Close enough." The waitress arrived. "What can I get you?" Elijah didn't even look at the menu. 2 grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. Naomi blinked. "That was our lunch." He nodded. "First real meal I remember enjoying." The waitress smiled and walked away. Naomi leaned back in the booth. "So tell me," she said. "How does a homeless boy become Elijah Brooks?" He exhaled slowly. "It wasn't fast." She waited. And he began. "The foster home I was placed in, it wasn't terrible. Not great either. But it was stable." He paused. "But I was angry. Angry at the world. Angry at being forgotten." Naomi listened quietly. "The ribbon helped," he continued. She tilted her head. "How?" "Whenever I felt like giving up, I'd hold it." He tapped his coat pocket. "It reminded me someone once believed I was worth feeding." Her eyes softened. "I was just sharing lunch." She didn't argue this time. He continued. "I studied harder than anyone in school. Not because I loved it, but because I was terrified of being powerless again." "What did you study?" "Engineering first. Then business." She nodded. "That makes sense. My first company failed." "Of course it did." He laughed. "You're supposed to say something encouraging. No successful story skips failure." He smiled. "I like that about you." The waitress returned with their food. Steam rose from the soup. The grilled cheese sandwiches looked perfect. For a moment, neither spoke again. They both took a bite. And suddenly they were kids again. Naomi laughed. "Oh wow, that tastes exactly the same. Right? 20 years later." He nodded. "Some things shouldn't change." She studied him again. "But success did change you." "How?" "You're calmer." He shrugged. "Money removes certain fears. But not all of them." "No. What still scares you?" He didn't hesitate. "Losing people who matter." She looked down at her soup. "You didn't lose me." "I almost did." Her voice softened. "Why didn't you just move on?" "I tried." "And?" "You don't move on from the person who kept you alive." That landed heavily. Naomi swallowed slowly. Do you know something funny? She said. What? When you disappeared, I thought maybe you'd forgotten me. Never. I used to check that fence for months. His chest tightened. You waited? Kids believe in miracles. And adults? Adults learn miracles are rare. He leaned forward. Then maybe tonight counts as one. She looked out the window for a moment. The Chicago streetlights glowed softly against the dark. Maybe it does, she admitted. After dinner they walked outside. The air was colder now. They strolled down the sidewalk slowly. Do you remember the park bench near the school? Naomi asked. Of course. Let's walk there. 10 minutes later they reached it. The same bench. Older. More scratched. But still standing. They sat. For a while, neither spoke. Then Naomi said quietly. You know something I never told you? What? That winter, when I gave you my coat. I got sick. His head snapped toward her. You what? Just a cold. Naomi. It was worth it. He shook his head slowly. You sacrificed your own warmth. You needed it more. He stared at the ground. All those years. I thought I owed you a thank you. You didn't owe me anything. No, he said softly. I owed you a life. She looked at him carefully. And you built one. For both of us. She frowned slightly. What does that mean? He took a deep breath. I funded the youth center. I know. I funded 3 more programs in your name. Her eyes widened. You what? They're anonymous donations. Elijah. I wanted the work you started to grow. She was speechless. Why didn't you tell me? Because it wasn't about credit. She shook her head slowly. You're unbelievable. Good or bad? Good. Silence again. Then Naomi said something unexpected. Do you remember the promise you made me? His eyebrows lifted. I made a lot of promises. No. The one you made when we were kids. He thought for a moment. Then it hit him. His eyes widened slightly. You remember that? Of course I remember. He laughed nervously. I was 10. And you said. She leaned slightly closer. You said, when I grow up and get rich. I'm going to marry you. He rubbed the back of his neck. I was a dramatic kid. You were very serious actually. He looked at her. You're bringing this up because. She smiled. Because I want to know if rich Elijah still keeps his promises. The air suddenly felt heavier. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood up. Walked a few steps. Then turned back to her. Naomi Carter. She raised an eyebrow. That sounds serious. I spent 20 years looking for you. She stood slowly. I know. I built everything hoping one day I'd see you again. She stepped closer. Elijah. I'm not asking you to marry me tonight. She laughed. Good. But I am asking something. What? Give us a chance. The wind moved softly through the trees. Naomi studied him. Not the millionaire. The boy she once knew. The boy who survived. The boy who kept the ribbon. Finally she said. You're lucky I like grilled cheese. He smiled. Is that a yes? It's a maybe. He laughed. I'll take maybe. She held out her hand. Let's walk. He took it. And for the first time in 20 years. The promise made by 2 hungry children. Felt possible again. They walked in silence for a while. The city had changed in 20 years. New buildings. New streets. New people rushing past them like they were late for lives they hadn't chosen. But Elijah walked like a man who knew exactly where he was going. Naomi kept stealing glances at him. The same boy she once shared a single loaf of bread with was now one of the richest men in the city. Finally she asked softly, "Where are we going?" Elijah smiled. "You'll see." They turned down a quiet street Naomi had never noticed before. At the end of it stood a large iron gate. Behind it was something she didn't expect. A school. Not just any school. A beautiful one. Wide windows. Clean brick walls. Children laughing in the courtyard. Naomi slowed down. "Elijah, what is this place?" He pushed the gate open. The sign above the entrance read, "The Naomi Foundation Academy." Naomi stopped walking. Her heart skipped. "What, did you say?" Elijah pointed to the sign. "I built it." She looked at him in confusion. "Why is it named after me?" Elijah's voice became quiet. "Because 20 years ago, when we had nothing, you shared your only food with me." Naomi shook her head. "That was just bread." "No," Elijah said. "That was hope." They stepped inside the courtyard. Children ran past them laughing. Some carried books. Some practiced reading aloud. Others sat under a tree doing homework. Naomi felt tears forming in her eyes. "How many children study here?" Elijah replied. 312. Her jaw dropped. 300. And every one of them, he continued, comes from a family that couldn't afford school. Naomi covered her mouth. "You did this?" Elijah nodded. "But that's not the real reason I brought you here." He led her into the main building. Inside was a hallway filled with framed photos. Graduation pictures. Smiling students in caps and gowns. Doctors. Teachers. Engineers. At the end of the hall was a glass office door. Elijah opened it. Inside was a small desk with a folder sitting on top. He handed it to her. "Open it." Naomi slowly flipped it open. Inside were documents. Scholarship records. Tuition payments. Student applications. At the top of every page was the same title. The Naomi Scholarship Fund. Her hand started shaking. "Elijah, what is this?" He leaned against the desk. "For 20 years, every child who couldn't afford school got help from this fund." Naomi looked back at him. "But why put my name on it?" Elijah smiled gently. "Because that night, when you shared that bread, you told me something I never forgot." Naomi frowned slightly. "I don't remember." He finished the sentence for her. "You said, one day, when we have more, we help someone else." Naomi's eyes filled with tears. "I said that?" "You did." She laughed softly through the tears. "I was just a hungry kid." Elijah shook his head. "No. You were the reason I kept going." For a moment the room was silent. Then a voice suddenly interrupted them. "Well, this is touching." They both turned. A tall man in a sharp gray suit stood in the doorway. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Elijah Carter," he said coldly. "I've been looking for you." Elijah's face hardened. "Mr. Grant." Naomi sensed the tension instantly. Grant stepped inside slowly. "You built quite the little charity here." His eyes moved around the office. "Too bad it might not exist much longer." Naomi frowned. "What does that mean?" Grant smirked. Let's just say, some very powerful investors think this land could be used for something much more profitable. Elijah crossed his arms. This school isn't for sale. Grant leaned closer. Everything is for sale. Elijah didn't move. Not this. Grant's smile disappeared. You have 1 week. If you don't agree to sell. He looked directly at Naomi. This entire place will be shut down. The room went silent. Children's laughter echoed faintly from outside. Naomi slowly closed the folder. The promise made by 2 hungry children was about to be tested. The office door closed behind the man in the gray suit. For a few seconds, neither Elijah nor Naomi spoke. Outside, children's laughter floated through the open window. The sound felt fragile now. Like something that could disappear. Naomi finally broke the silence. Who was that? Elijah exhaled slowly. His name is Victor Grant. And? He owns half the commercial developments downtown. Naomi frowned. So he's a competitor? Elijah nodded. But that's not the real problem. She crossed her arms. What's the real problem? He's ruthless. Naomi looked down at the scholarship folder again. You think he was serious? Elijah didn't hesitate. Yes. Naomi's stomach tightened. But he can't just shut down a school. Elijah walked to the window. He watched the children playing soccer in the yard. I bought this land 15 years ago, he said quietly. Back then, nobody wanted it. Why? Naomi asked. Because the neighborhood was considered too poor to invest in. Naomi sighed. That sounds about right. But things changed. How? Elijah pointed toward the skyline visible in the distance. Developers discovered the area. New offices. New apartment towers. New money. Naomi understood immediately. And now the land is valuable. Very valuable. How valuable? Elijah turned to her. About $80 million. Naomi blinked. 80 million? And growing. Her voice dropped. So Grant wants the land. Yes. And the school is in the way. Elijah nodded. Naomi felt anger rising. These are children. To him, Elijah replied calmly. They're numbers. Naomi paced across the room. Well, he picked the wrong school to mess with. Elijah smiled faintly. That's exactly what I said. She stopped walking. But how can he actually shut it down? Elijah hesitated. Then he answered. Legal pressure. Naomi stared. Explain. He's buying properties around the school. And? If he owns enough of the surrounding land, he can file zoning complaints. Naomi's eyes widened. You mean he can legally block the school from operating? Yes. Even if it helps kids? Elijah nodded slowly. Money writes the rules. Naomi looked back at the photos on the wall. Graduates. Scholarship winners. Smiling students holding certificates. This can't happen, she whispered. Elijah's voice softened. It won't. But Naomi could hear the tension beneath his calm. Before she could reply, a knock came at the door. A small voice followed. Mr. Brooks? Elijah turned. Come in. The door opened. A boy about 12 stepped inside. Thin. Shy. Holding a worn backpack. Naomi immediately recognized the look in his eyes. The same look Elijah once had. Hi, Marcus, Elijah said gently. The boy nodded. Sorry to interrupt. You're not interrupting, Naomi said kindly. Marcus looked at Elijah. I just wanted to tell you something. Elijah crouched down to the boy's level. What's up? Marcus hesitated. Then he spoke quietly. My mom got a job today. Elijah smiled. That's great news. Marcus nodded. She said it happened because of the school. Naomi's heart warmed. How so? The school helped her learn computer stuff. And now she works at an office. Elijah placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. That's amazing. Marcus looked nervous now. So, we're not going to lose the school, right? The question hung in the air. Naomi glanced at Elijah. Elijah forced a reassuring smile. Of course not. Marcus relaxed. Good. He started walking toward the door. Then he turned back. My mom says this place saved our life. He left. The door closed softly behind him. The room fell silent again. Naomi wiped a tear from her cheek. Elijah. He looked at her. We can't lose this. He shook his head. We won't. But Naomi could see the worry in his eyes. Grant wasn't just attacking a building. He was attacking a future. And Elijah knew something Naomi didn't yet realize. Victor Grant had already started the war. Across the city, contracts were being signed. Lawyers were filing complaints. And within days, the school would receive its first official shutdown notice. The promise made between two hungry children was about to face its greatest challenge. The envelope arrived on a quiet Monday morning. It sat on Naomi's desk longer than it should have. Plain white. Government seal. Stamped urgent. Something about it felt heavy. Naomi stared at it while the sounds of children laughing outside filled the hallway. The playground was full. Kids running, shouting, chasing each other like the world had no problems. She finally opened the letter. Her eyes moved slowly across the page. Then she stopped breathing for a second. Effective immediately. The Naomi Hope Scholarship Foundation is under investigation for regulatory violations. The school will receive an official shutdown notice pending review. Naomi whispered, almost to herself. No. Elijah walked into the office just as she lowered the paper. What happened? She handed him the letter. His eyes scanned it once. Then again. His jaw tightened. This isn't an investigation, he said quietly. It's an attack. Naomi looked confused. From who? Elijah didn't hesitate. Victor Grant. The name hung in the air like a storm cloud. Outside the window, a group of children ran past the building, laughing loudly as they kicked a soccer ball across the grass. Naomi watched them. 7 days, she said softly. Elijah looked back at the letter. They think we'll panic. Naomi folded the paper slowly and placed it on the desk. But something in her expression had changed. Her voice became steady. No. She stood up. They think we'll give up. Elijah studied her face carefully. And will we? Naomi shook her head. Outside, the children kept playing, unaware their school might disappear in a week. We built this place from nothing, she said. So if someone wants to destroy it. Her eyes hardened. They're going to have to fight us first. Elijah allowed a small smile. Good. He walked toward the window and looked out at the playground. Because Victor Grant just started a war he doesn't understand. And across the city, Victor Grant was already making his next move. That night, the school was quiet. The classrooms were empty. The hallways that were once full of laughter now echoed with silence. Naomi sat alone in the office, the shutdown letter still lying on the desk. 7 days. 7 days before everything they built could disappear. A soft knock came at the door. Elijah stepped inside. "Come with me," he said. Naomi followed him down the dim hallway and into a small room she had never entered before. It looked more like a private study than an office. Shelves filled with old books lined the walls. But Elijah walked straight to a locked drawer in his desk. He paused for a moment before opening it. Inside was a small, worn envelope. The paper looked old, very old. Elijah carefully took it out and handed it to Naomi. "What's this?" she asked. Elijah's voice was calm but serious. "Something I've kept for 20 years. Naomi slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a small folded note. The handwriting was messy, uneven, clearly written by a child. Her heart began beating faster as she read the words. "If you ever become rich one day, please help kids who are hungry like us." Naomi froze. Her eyes widened. This is my handwriting." Elijah nodded. "You wrote it behind the grocery store the day we met." Naomi tried to remember. The cold nights. The empty stomach. The little boy she shared her food with. "I didn't think you even remembered that," she whispered. Elijah smiled slightly. "I never forgot." He leaned against the desk. "That note became my promise." Naomi looked down at the paper again. "You kept this for 20 years?" Elijah nodded. "Every business decision I made, every dollar I earned. I remembered this letter." He looked directly at her. "And now Victor Grant wants to destroy the very thing that promise built." Naomi slowly folded the note and placed it back in the envelope. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Naomi took a deep breath. "Well." She handed the envelope back to Elijah. "Then we're not just fighting for a school anymore." Elijah raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Naomi's voice was quiet but determined. "We're fighting for a promise." Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance. And across the city, Victor Grant was preparing the next step of his plan. The next morning, the news broke. At first, it was just a small article online. Naomi Hope Scholarship Foundation under investigation. But within hours, it was everywhere. Local news stations. Social media posts. Radio talk shows. People started asking questions. Parents began calling the school. Is it true the school is shutting down? Teachers gathered in the hallway whispering nervously. Naomi stood in the office listening to the phones ring non-stop. Fear was spreading faster than the truth. Elijah walked in holding a tablet. "You should see this." He placed it on the desk. A video was going viral online. It showed a young man standing in front of the school gates. Naomi recognized him immediately. Marcus? Marcus was one of the first students who ever received the Naomi Hope Scholarship. He had graduated years ago. Now he was speaking directly to the camera. "If this school closes, hundreds of kids will lose their future." His voice was strong. "I grew up with nothing. This place gave me food, education, and hope." He pointed behind him at the school. "I'm now a doctor because of this foundation." The video ended with one sentence. "Don't let them take this away." Naomi felt tears forming in her eyes. "That's not all," Elijah said. He scrolled down. More videos. Former students. Parents. Teachers. One after another. They were all telling the same story. "This school changed our lives." By afternoon, something unexpected started happening. People began gathering outside the school gates. First 10 people. Then 50. Then hundreds. Holding handmade signs. "Save our school. Protect our future. The promise matters." Naomi stood at the window staring at the growing crowd. I didn't ask them to do this. Elijah smiled slightly. You didn't need to. Naomi turned to him. But will it be enough? Before Elijah could answer, his phone buzzed. He checked the message. His expression darkened immediately. What is it? Naomi asked. Elijah slowly looked up. Victor Grant just made his move. Naomi's heart skipped. What did he do? Elijah placed the phone on the table. On the screen was a news alert. New evidence claims Naomi Hope founder lied about her past. Naomi stared at it in shock. That's impossible. Elijah nodded. Yes. It is. He leaned back slightly. But Victor doesn't need the truth. He looked toward the crowd outside the school. He just needs people to start doubting. And across the city. Victor Grant was watching the news with a satisfied smile. Within hours, the story exploded. News channels replayed the headline again and again. Did Naomi lie about her past? Photos began circulating online. Old pictures of shelters. Blurred documents. Anonymous posts claiming Naomi had fabricated her story to gain sympathy. None of it made sense. But the damage was already spreading. Inside the school, teachers gathered around their phones reading the accusations. Some parents started pulling their children out of class early. Naomi sat silently in Elijah's office, staring at the television screen. One reporter said, "If these allegations are true, the entire foundation could collapse." Naomi whispered, almost to herself, "I never lied." Elijah muted the TV. "I know. But people don't wait for proof anymore," Naomi said. "They believe the loudest voice." Elijah stood and walked toward the window. Outside, the crowd was still there. But now the energy had changed. Some people looked confused. Others were reading the news on their phones. Victor's plan was working. Naomi's voice shook slightly. What if they believe him? Elijah turned slowly. Then something in his expression changed. Calm. Almost confident. What Victor doesn't know, Elijah said quietly, is that I expected this. Naomi looked up. You expected it? Elijah nodded. 4 months. He walked to his desk and opened a thin black folder. Inside were documents. Photos. Old records. Security footage. Proof of Naomi's past, every shelter she stayed in, every school she attended, every moment that confirmed her story. Naomi stared in shock. You kept all this? Elijah closed the folder gently. I built an empire by preparing for my enemies. He slid the folder across the desk. And Victor Grant just walked straight into a trap. Naomi slowly opened the folder again. What are you going to do? Elijah picked up his phone. And dialed one number. When the person answered, Elijah spoke only 4 words. Schedule a press conference. Naomi looked at him nervously. You're going to face them? Elijah nodded. Not just face them. A small smile appeared on his face. We're going to end this. Across the city. Victor Grant was celebrating his victory. He had no idea that by morning, everything was about to turn against him. By the next morning, the entire city was watching. News vans surrounded the Naomi Hope Scholarship Foundation. Cameras. Reporters. Crowds. Everyone wanted to hear what Elijah Vance and Naomi would say about the accusations. Inside the building, Naomi stood nervously behind the stage curtain. Her hands were slightly shaking. What if this makes things worse? She asked quietly. Elijah adjusted his jacket. It won't. He handed her something. The old envelope. The same letter she wrote as a child. Naomi looked at it and took a deep breath. "Ready?" Elijah asked. Naomi nodded. They stepped onto the stage together. Flashes from cameras filled the room. Reporters immediately began shouting questions. Did Naomi lie about her past? Is the foundation a fraud? Will the school shut down? Elijah raised his hand. The room slowly became quiet. He spoke calmly. Yesterday, a man named Victor Grant accused Naomi of lying about her childhood. Murmurs spread across the room. Elijah continued. He claimed this entire foundation was built on a false story. Then Elijah turned slightly toward Naomi. Today, we're going to show you the truth. He signaled to a screen behind them. It lit up. One by one, records appeared. Shelter registrations. School records. Photos. Witness statements. Proof of every year Naomi struggled growing up. The room became silent. Then Elijah held up the final piece. The 20-year-old letter. He read it out loud. If you ever become rich one day, please help kids who are hungry like us. The reporters leaned forward. Elijah lowered the paper. This letter was written by Naomi when we were both children with nothing. He paused. This foundation exists because of that promise. Naomi stepped forward. Her voice was steady. I never imagined my story would matter to anyone. She looked toward the cameras. But if telling the truth helps even one child believe their future can change. She smiled softly. Then every moment of this fight was worth it. For a few seconds. No one spoke. Then one reporter slowly began clapping. Another joined. Soon the entire room erupted in applause. The truth had won. Later that evening, the investigation against the school was officially dropped. The shutdown notice was cancelled. And outside the foundation building, the crowd that once feared losing the school now celebrated its survival. Naomi stood near the playground watching the children run across the grass again. Elijah walked beside her. Looks like the promise survived, he said. Naomi smiled. No. She looked at the school full of children laughing and learning. It grew. And somewhere in the distance, Victor Grant watched the news of his defeat. The story he tried to destroy had become stronger than ever. Because sometimes, one small act of kindness can change thousands of lives. If this story touched your heart, take 1 second to help this message reach more people.